So my favorite comedian is a man named Nate Bargatze, and I doubt very many people know him. I think he's kind of like the biggest comedian right now, but still, comedy's kind of a dying art, unfortunately. But he's a clean comic, so he's great to listen to with the whole family. It's not awkward, it's not off-putting. It's a great thing, so go check it out. But he tells a fantastic story that sets us up today. It was his daughter's first day of first grade. And they went to the bus stop, and they put her on the bus, and I'm sure there was donuts or cinnamon rolls, and I'm sure they were waving as she pressed her face against the little bus door as the bus drove off. And it was a great day. He was so excited. And then, about 20 minutes before dismissal, Nate says, I got a phone call. It was somebody from the school, and they said, hey, we've misplaced or didn't write down what bus number your daughter rides, and so can you just tell us the number of the bus she needs to get on? Nate stops, and he says, you know I'm the dad, right? Like, if you look one line up, it probably says Mom, and she will know that answer. He goes on to say, honestly, you could probably just ask some other woman in that building, and she will have a better chance of coming to the right conclusion than I will. Eventually they say, well, we're not going to just send her on a random bus. We don't want her to show up in the wrong neighborhood and not get home tonight. So they said, can you just come pick her up? He said, yes, I'll come pick her up. And he says, hang on, I have one more question. Will you tell me the name of the school? See, today is Mother's Day, and we are so grateful and thankful for the mothers in our lives who know what bus number we are supposed to ride, who make sure that we had our lunch and a snack because we're going to get hungry, who take care of all those things. Now, I'm not the dad who doesn't know the bus number, and I don't want to be that dad, but still, there is a role that a mom plays in the life of a child that is so great. And the impact of a mom on a kid matters. One article says that a mother is the kid's first and best teacher. Mothers help us learn and navigate the world. Mothers give us confidence and self-esteem. They encourage us and they show us compassion. When we fall or when we fail, the first person we want to call is our mom. The impact of a mother is also shown in Scripture. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5, Paul is so excited because Timothy is leading the church of Ephesus, and he wants to encourage him, but he says, but I'm also reminded that your sincere faith didn't just start with you, Timothy. It dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and then in your mother Eunice. Timothy, you came to faith because of the impact of your mom and your grandmother. And your mom came to faith because of the impact of her mom. The impact of a mom cannot be understated. But a mom is not just simply a person who just birthed a child or adopted a child. There are a lot of people in this day that Mother's Day is a really challenging day because it's a reminder that they are not what they want to be. But I want to tell you, and I want to sit in this today, the whole rest of it is, whether you've birthed a child or adopted a child, you can still be like a mother to someone. In Romans chapter 16, Paul writes of this. He is saying to his friends, hey, thank you for the way that you have made an impact on my life. And he says, greet Rufus, who is chosen in the Lord, and also his mother, who has been a mother to me as well. We don't know her name, but we know her impact. You may not be a biological mother to someone, but you can still love on them and care for them and show compassion to them and serve in a role for them. I think about, what did Rufus's mother do? I bet she complimented and encouraged Paul, and he said, oh shucks, I'm really not that great. I bet she checked in on him and cared for him. I bet she helped him even when he didn't need help. He said, I've got this. No, I want to take care of it for you. She probably cooked meals and told him, go get some rest, I'll clean up. Today, the call that I want to see is to act like a mother, and I think Jesus teaches not the mother side of this, but his commandment he gives us fits very well in this for us today. Because it is a call to love. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about our legacy. We've just finished about 14 weeks in the book of Acts and really sitting in that verse by verse for the first 9 chapters. And we're going to take a brief hiatus for the month of May into looking at legacy. We'll have a textual sermon, trust me, over the whole time. And then we're going to jump into, in June, we're going to start looking at the story of Abraham. But for this month, I want us to really consider, what is your legacy? What is your legacy? What are you building right now that's going to last in the future? Because, see, a legacy is not something you can just say about yourself. You cannot write in your will, I want to be known as the best cook. I want to be known as the most generous person you ever met. I want to be known as the happiest person to ever live. No. We don't get to choose. We live out our legacy. We can't tell people how they're going to remember us. But our legacy matters because it impacts lives, just like Timothy's life was impacted, because of a legacy of faith. A legacy is best understood as your character on display over time. I heard a quote this week that said this: your reputation, which is kind of like your legacy, is the echo of your actions. Your reputation is the echo of your actions. You don't get to determine your reputation. You live it out, and people will go by your actions. That is your reputation. So let's dive into our text. We're in John chapter 13. John 13 is where we're going to be, and I'm going to set it up for you as you're flipping there in your Bibles. It's the same night we studied last week. It's that night of the final Passover where Jesus introduces the Lord's Supper, but he also does more, and John records more of that. In John 13, it starts off with Jesus in the most humbling sense, and what everybody else would have called humiliating. Jesus takes off his tunic and is down in really his underwear, in a sense, and he washes the feet of his disciples. That was such a demeaning job that they would not even allow Jewish servants to wash the feet of other Jews. They would make that be a Gentile servant's job. And yet here we have the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Savior of the world, God's only Son, bowing down, humbling himself to wash the feet of his disciples. He then will tell them over the next few verses that he will soon die and that he will go to be with his Father in heaven, but they cannot come right now. Thomas really wants to come. He'll say that in chapter 14, but Jesus says, you've got to stay and remain here. And then he says, but here is what I want you to do. Here are my expectations for you as you remain here. Verses 34 and 35, it says this: a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you are also to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Jesus is laying out expectations so clear that my 6-year-old Cooper could probably, in about 5 minutes of us reading that a few times, he could probably remember that and memorize those verses very quickly. They're that simple. But even the most mature Christian in here will tell you that to follow that is a struggle, no matter how great they are. It is a simple, that's a big thunder. It is a simple statement that's not so simple to complete. He says, this is my new commandment. Love one another as I love you. And as you do this, all people will know that you're my disciples. So let's break this down. Jesus says it's a new commandment. Now, the commandment or this idea of love is not new. We see the idea of love throughout the scriptures. It's everywhere. But Jesus brings a lot of clarity here in this verse. See, the Jewish believers would have known that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Jesus even affirms that is the greatest commandment. They would also know the 10 Commandments, right? Not have any other, don't worship any other gods, no idols, don't take the Lord's name in vain, not to covet, not to steal, not to be adulterous, not to murder. That they understand all of these commands, They even know that Jesus has said in Leviticus 19 that we are to love our neighbor. So they get all of these commandments, but really most of the Old Testament commandments deal with what you are to abstain from or refrain from. They're the things you're not supposed to do. Most of the Old Testament, especially in the book of Leviticus, is don't eat that, don't say this, don't walk that many steps, don't touch that, and don't worship those. And honestly, the don't commandments are probably easier for us to follow. Right? Like my mom told me growing up not to smoke. Okay? That was easy enough for me to follow. Right? Like I just didn't choose to do that. However, my mom also told me to love my sisters and be nice to my sisters. I was good at the not smoking part. Right? We prefer the don'ts, the abstain from commandments. They're easier to know where we are and where we stand in those. We're not so good with the do commandments because we can't rest in those commandments. We have to keep doing. He says, a new commandment I give to you. Love one another. You know what that means? Quit bickering, quit fighting, quit gossiping, quit backstabbing, quit slandering, quit cheating, quit lying. Stop all this selfishness in which you continue to practice and to treat each other in a loving manner, in a kind manner, with compassion. If we need a definition of love, we can go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and we see what Paul tells us about love. It's patient and it's kind. This is how we love one another. We're patient, we're kind. We don't envy, we don't boast. We're not arrogant. Verse 5. We're not rude to one another. We don't insist on our own way. Working with the Branch Connection this week, I saw insisting on your own way very clearly. We are not irritable. We're not resentful. We don't rejoice at wrongdoing. Played putt-putt yesterday, and every time I missed an easy shot, Cooper said yes or laughed. That's not loving. We rejoice with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. If you want a fuller understanding of how to live that out, I think in November we preached through that whole chapter. Go back and check it out. We worked verse by verse through that chapter. But go check out how do we love. But I think most of us understand when we're loving and when we're not loving. Jesus says that we are to love one another. That's his command. Are you leaving a legacy of love? Is the way that you treat your spouse, your child, your parents, your cousins, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, are you leaving a legacy of love? Because your reputation is an echo of your actions. John MacArthur says it really well. He says this: love is the distinguishing characteristic of discipleship. Love is the distinguishing characteristic of discipleship. How you are following Jesus is seen in how you are loving those around you. Paul even lists in the fruit of the Spirit, what does the fruit produce in us? What happens as we are made into this new creation? The first thing that he says that the Spirit will produce in us is love. Then it comes joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. But love is the first thing that he says. Jesus says, you are to love one another. And some of you go, okay, can we just limit that to the people in this room? Because, yeah, some of them are difficult, but I could at least try to accomplish that. But we know from Jesus' full teaching that the one another is not just people that look like you, believe like you, and talk like you. It's everybody. Jesus will tell us to love our enemy, to love our neighbor. And our neighbor extends to even that person beat up on the side of the road, as Jesus will teach at the Good Samaritan. But if we can't love in these normal and natural relationships we have, then we need to start there. Now, Jesus then gives us an example of how to love. He says, as I have loved you. Now remember, 33 verses ago, Jesus started to take off his outer clothes and started to fill up a bowl of water and started to rub the dirt and grime off of his disciples' feet in an act of love. Jesus is saying, love as I have loved you, selflessly, sacrificially. That's probably what Paul felt from Rufus's mother, selfless and sacrificial. Jesus has modeled how to love. He will go on to model it. Because not only does he love in that instance, over the next day, Jesus will also demonstrate his greatest act of love. As he willingly is arrested, as he silently goes before the slaughter, as he is willing to allow the nails to pierce through his hands, as the thorns are shoved into his head, as he is mocked and murdered, what does Jesus say? Father, forgive them. He is showing love verbally, but also his demonstration is an act of love because he knows that we cannot save ourselves. And in love, he chooses to do what we cannot do, by giving himself up and making himself the righteous requirement for us. Jesus says, you are to love one another as I have loved you. And Jesus most literally loves you to death. This is how the Christian community should operate. Without the physical Jesus here on the earth, we should live like Jesus towards one another. We should be living in that same way. And verse 35 gives us the purpose. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Remember, love is the distinguishing characteristic of discipleship. It reveals the change that God has made in your life. The mission of a follower of Jesus is learning from Jesus to live and love like Jesus. Our mission is to look at the Scriptures and to uncover and to understand who our God is and who His Son is, and to watch as He models to us love, and we are to learn from that so that we can then live and love like Him in our world, because that is how lives begin to be changed. When people see that Christ has changed everything. And so, we are to be people learning to live and love like Jesus. And sadly, most of us and most Christians do not live anything like Jesus. We've been given the text, we've been given the model, and yet here's what we do. We have hardline beliefs on what is right and what is wrong, and we will fight for that, and we will vote for that, and we will picket for that, and we will protest for that. We have really strong thoughts on how and where we should do baptism. We have really strong thoughts on what songs we should sing. We have really strong thoughts on which denomination is best. And then our following of Jesus is quite lacking. We proudly thump our Bibles on theological points and then undercut everything that we say by the way that we live towards others. We go and we preach and we preach and we preach what is true, and then we don't practice any of it. We pick and choose what we want to stand on, and we do not live out love in any way. We hate those who disagree with us. We hate those who live differently than us. We hate those who do not align with us. And then we say, well, we're a people of love. Friends, James tells us in chapter 1, be doers of the word, not hearers only. We need to start practicing what we preach, because orthodoxy without obedience is nonsensical. To have all the right answers in our head and have no way to live it out makes no sense. I don't care how good at Bible trivia you are. I don't care if you could ace every single New Testament exam in a seminary. If you are not living out love, we are not doing what God has called us to. He didn't call us to be Bible scholars. He called us to be Bible doers. And so this is how we are to love. James 3 says this. Speaking of the tongue, he says, with our tongue we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse the people that are made in His image. Verse 10 says, for the same mouth comes blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not be so. We need to practice and preach. Honestly, we need to start practicing before we start preaching. Jesus makes this point very clearly that our life is our witness. I'm going to say this very clearly. You are being watched. Now, not in a creepy way, all right? I'm not getting into the big brother conspiracies that Alexa's listening to everything that you say and you shouldn't have one of those in your house. I'm not saying if you want to put something over the laptop camera you have, that's your prerogative, not mine. I'm not getting into, all of this, but you're being watched. If somebody at your workplace knows that you proclaim Christianity or that you go to church, they probably are watching, or not probably, they are watching then how you deal with situations. You are being watched. And they want to see, does your practice align with your preaching? Do you actually do what you say? Or are you just another hypocritical Christian just living one way on Sunday and completely opposed to that Monday through Friday? I remember about 9 months into our time in our house, we were at dinner with two couples from our street. And it was funny, they said, okay, we got to tell you something. I said, all right, what's going on? And they said, when you first moved in, we didn't know what to do with having a pastor on the street. We're going to be honest. It kind of weirded us out. Like, y'all seemed friendly, but we didn't know what to do with that. And so they said, we had a block party. I don't know if y'all remember, 3 weeks into y'all moving in, and everybody was watching y'all the whole time. Like if somebody says a cuss word, do y'all just leave? Like if somebody is doing this or making this joke or talking about this, will y'all just push them away or will y'all remove yourself? They said, we didn't know what to do. And then I think they said, well, now you're pretty normal, we like you now. So that was better, right? But it's interesting, right? We were literally being watched because we want to know how you're going to handle this. Friends, you're being watched. If you're a parent, your kid's watching. Are you loving your spouse? Are you loving them? Maybe you have a child that's moved out of the home, but they know that you're still here on Sunday mornings, but you're going, man, I wish that they would be in church. And many of you are in that situation. You pray for them and all this. Do you ever talk about spiritual things around them? Not forcing it down their throat, but do you ever just bring up, hey, this is what God's teaching me. This is what I'm praying through. This is what we talked about at church on Sunday. This is what my Bible study time is talking about. Do you have those conversations? Because they're watching, and they know that this means something to you, but it's not overflowing. Because you're really quick to talk about the Cowboys, and you're really quick to talk about your grass, and you're really quick to talk about this new clothing you got, but are you really quick to talk about what God is doing? See, you're being watched at work. If people know that you're a Christian or a believer, are you refuting your witness by your poor work ethic, by your constant criticism, by your negative attitude, by your selfish choices? Or are you modeling selflessness and sacrifice even at work? And yeah, you get taken advantage of, but it's an opportunity to live out as Christ lived for you. I've told you guys we've had the senior center here, and it's been fun to have them here this past week, but one interaction stands out. Y'all know I play pickleball. Most of you know I play pickleball at the rec center, and there was a friend there named Barbara, and Barbara plays pickleball with me. We've been knowing each other for about 4 months. And every time I play pickleball, just about, I wear a shirt that says First Baptist, just as a statement of, hey, I'm kind of working here, right? At least that's what I say. Personnel committee, I hope you're okay with that, right? But Barbara just knew me as Jordan. And then she showed up. She's been a member of the senior center, and she showed up, and she said, I didn't know you're the pastor here. I said, well, yeah, it's pretty fun. We'd love to have you. She said, well, I don't think I can call you Jordan anymore. So what are you? Are you father? Are you pastor? Are you reverend? I said, well, I'm still Jordan. If you really want to call me something, like, you can go with Pastor Jordan, that's fine. I'll do Pastor Whittington. Okay. A lot of people in my interactions, they look at me because there's been some things that we can't get it to 65 all the time around here, and so that's been a challenge for some people. But they'll look at me and they go, "Are you associated with this church?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I'm the pastor." And then they'll say, "Oh, okay. Well, I can't call you Jordan anymore." Like, it's changed their whole demeanor and how they interact with me. But here's what's interesting. For me, I welcome the opportunity. I want them to know that I'm the pastor, that I'm not just a senior center employee. Why? Because these people are stepping into our campus, and they may never step onto a church campus again. But they are being modeled who Christ is, hopefully, by how I treat them and how I live. Am I perfect? No. But I am intentional in everything that I do. I try to be selfless and sacrificial. I try to be helpful and kind at every moment so that they get a taste of Christianity that is positive. Because there's a lot of people that have a sour taste of it right now. You are being watched. What are you displaying? What's the legacy that you're living? And does any bit of your legacy point to Christ? Is the legacy of love? He says, "The new commandment I give you is to love one another." Is that the legacy that you're leaving? You will know that you are my disciples by the way that you love. If I just watched your week, if we big brothered this and just set up a camera in your living room, if we tapped your phones, would I hear love? If I sat in on you calling customer service because DirecTV is out because clouds are everywhere right now. If I watched you in your car stuck in traffic and that person in the left lane is not going fast enough for your liking, would how you interact with your coworkers display love? We know how to love. And I think that a mother is such a great example of love because a mother is encouraging, is caring, is serving. And so this week, how can you live out love in a real practical way? Encourage someone. Everybody likes to be encouraged. Say something nice on purpose to someone. I'm okay if you say it to me. Like I'm good with that. Encourage someone. Pray for someone. Ask someone how they are doing or how you can pray for them. Reach out to someone that you haven't seen in a while and check in on them. Serve someone, help someone, care for someone, call someone, send a note to someone, seek peace with someone, speak kindly to someone, listen to someone, be present to someone, go visit someone. Our love is our witness. Failure to love is failure to obey the command that Jesus has set forth for us. Orthodoxy, getting all of this right, without obedience is nonsensical. And remember, you are being watched. My question is, what legacy are you building? And does your legacy point to Christ? Some of you, your legacy is the grumpy old man who doesn't want people walking across their lawn. Let's get over that. Some of you is that lady that nobody wants to go near because you're just going to take their time and for 20 minutes complain about everything the city's doing wrong. Let's not leave that legacy. Some of you are that person at work that nobody ever reaches out to because you're not helpful, you have no patience, and you will never do anything above what your job calls you to do. Some of you are just a negative Nancy that only sees the problems. Will you change how you are acting and focus on how can I love everybody I interact with? Can I leave a legacy of love? Because our legacy can be what points people to Christ. Will you throw back on the screen verse 5 of 2 Timothy, Kennedy? It says this, I am reminded of your sincere faith. He's saying, Timothy, I know you're faithful. You're doing a great job here. I know it's difficult. I'm reminded of your faith, But I'm also reminded that it dwelt first in your grandmother and in your mother. Their faith led to the faith of this man, Timothy, who was then helping lead so many people to faith. Friends, we do not know the impact of our legacy, but if we live in a legacy of love, as Christ loved us, we will be making an impact that is worth it. Let me pray for us.